Welcome to Scotch Conversations. My name is Brody. We welcome you today with keen interest, not in your role as a well-known politician, but as a person who boarded at the school. I believe that you came from a farm in Wiley, so yeah. Can you tell us a bit about where you boarded, what school you boarded at, and for how many years you boarded?
Yeah, so I went to MLC. I boarded for 5 years. My mum also went to MLC, so I grew up knowing that I'd do my early years schooling in Wildcatcham at Wildcatcham District High School, and then go to boarding school from year 8 to 12.
Oh, thank you, Miss Davies. My name is Patrick, and I'm a current boarder at Scotch. My family we farm in the Shire of Down. Growing up in the country and then heading away for school can have its challenges. What were some of the more difficult parts about the transition to boarding school for you?
Yeah, I'd come from a very small community like Dowran, and I think coming into a very big school was probably one of the first challenges. Obviously, being away from my family, and when I came away to school, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have we still got snail mail. That's how we corresponded. And if I wanted to talk to mum and dad, then we'd have 10 minutes during the week on a payphone, and we'd be allowed to talk maybe for the same amount of time on the weekend if we were in the boarding house for the weekend. Really, for the first couple of years I was away, my folks weren't in Perth on a regular basis. So during the term, it was really we were at school. So I think that was probably the biggest transition. And I was quite homesick for the first part of year 8. But then, I had a wonderful house mother, Mrs. Freitag at the time, and also made some wonderful friends, and that made it easier. And I came away with my best friend, who was our next door neighbour from the farm in Wildcatcham as well, and that made it much easier because I wasn't here by myself.
Yeah, and what were the best bits of boarding? Like, do you have a favourite memory or experience there?
Oh, there's lots, and I think coming from a small town like Wiley, which I absolutely love, and that's still I live in Northam now, but I still consider Wiley home. Is that the boarding school and living with my friends, I guess, would be the first thing. Like, I made some amazing friends, and I think that's really important because they stay with you for a long time. And the opportunities that it gave me as a boarder coming from a much smaller community, the ability to play sport, but also pursue music and art, and then you could go to the movies on the weekend, or go and watch the footy, or go ice skating, and they're things that we probably couldn't do growing up in Wildcatcham. They were treats for school holidays, if that. So there was a lovely balance of being able to do things that the city affords you, but also to be able to go into the city. We used to go to the city and go to the art gallery, or we'd go to Fremantle and check that out, and we'd have excursions and opportunities that I think as a boarder made the experience of being away from your home and the people that you love somewhat easier, because you were doing some really cool stuff at the same time.
Cool.
Scotch has a big emphasis on community and developing young men who serve their communities. This is obviously something you're passionate about. Can you tell us what led you to this?
Yeah, Brody, I grew up surrounded by people that got in and had a go. I came from a really small community. When you come from regional Western Australia, often the only time that things happen in your community is when people in that community get in and get it done. So, and that's not unique. I mean, there's small towns right across the state where, from a regional perspective, you see people taking on leadership roles, maybe that they wouldn't be afforded in the metropolitan area. And so, Dad was on the PNC, who was president of the footy club, involved in the cricket. Nana and Pop, both involved in different community organisations. Next door neighbour was involved with the RSL, and we just saw leadership being demonstrated on a daily basis, and it's hard not to then think that's something that I want to do growing up, because they were the people that I respected. I think choosing to go into politics, my father was involved, and so I saw there was an opportunity to give back through a political career, whether it was as a member of parliament or being involved in a political party. And that's grown over the time that I've been involved, obviously. I started working for Max Trenorden, who was the leader of the National Party, in opposition when I came back from travelling after finishing uni. And I started working on his front desk as a receptionist and doing office management, having finished uni and not knowing what I wanted to do. But I really enjoyed working in the National Party. I liked what they were doing. I did a few other things along the way, but the things that inspired me was the opportunity to be able to give back to my community, be able to set policy, deal with some of the challenges that we face on a daily basis that I saw growing up and saw also my father and others involved in trying to solve.
Oh yeah, thanks. As a person from the country who attended boarding school and now represents the interests of rural West Australians as leader of the National Party and member for the Central Wheat Belt, can you give us your vision for the regional West Australia?
Yeah, I can. It's pretty simple. I want people that live in regional Western Australia to have access to the same opportunities that our Perth metropolitan people have. And I don't think I'm being unreasonable in that sense. There is still a disparity between even some of the most basic things that we deal with on a daily basis. So access to healthcare, access to quality education, telecommunications, being able to access, a mobile signal.
Yeah.
People don't think about that in Perth, do they? No, but that's a reality for you and your families at home. And how do you, as a young person who may want to return to your community, to run a business, to run a farm, to be involved, to start a new business, if you can't access telecommunications, if you can't educate your kids to the highest level of what you would expect, if you can't access a doctor or quality healthcare, you will make a decision not to live in those towns. And so me as a policymaker wants to see how we can reduce that gap so that people see living in regional Western Australia and those that are already there have access and opportunity the same as we do in the Perth Metro. I'm not saying we're going to have a Fiona Stanley Hospital in every Wildcatcham and Dowran, but I am saying that we need to come up with innovative ways to make sure that people feel safe, that their kids can get educated. Nana and Pop can grow old in the town that they contributed to. I think it's terrible that our older generations have to leave regional Western Australia at a time when they should be surrounded by their friends and their family. You lose your grandparents, they lose their community and support, and it separates family, and we lose all of that wisdom that came from being a part of that community. We should be able to do better, and that's why I like being involved in this job.
Yeah, I believe you had a significant connection with the Mick Gayfer, OSC. Mr. Gaff was a wonderful man, Nationals MP for 20 plus years. He had an involvement with CBH. Are there any recollections you may wish to share?
Well, Mick was an amazing individual. And again, I've talked about people getting in and getting involved. Mick was absolutely one of those people, and in all aspects. So in his own community, through local government, through CBH, which is, the biggest cooperative in Australia, drove huge decisions that changed agriculture in Western Australia significantly, and through the Parliament. And his view was that if you wanted to get in, you needed to get in and get it done. Make sure that you had the capacity to give something back to your community. I met Mick as a pretty young, new member of Parliament, and it was pretty daunting. He had a pretty big reputation, and he was an icon, I guess, from a fearless regional leader. And over my career, got to know him and his lovely wife better, and he was never backwards in providing advice, but he was also of understanding that whenever you take on a role, that you need to let people lead and make their own decisions. So Mick was there as a sounding board to provide advice. He was very direct whenever I went to visit him, and I really appreciated it. And his passing was a great loss for not just his family, who miss him keenly, but for our community. And he's certainly someone from a career perspective that you look back on and think, gosh, he did some amazing things, and gave so much back to the industry he loved, but also the communities that he was passionate about. I think that's a wonderful legacy.
Thank you so much. Today we have had the pleasure of welcoming Honorary Mia Davies, MLA, and leader of the opposition to Scotch College. Ms. Davies, I would like to thank you for your time and insights. We would like to share with you a small gesture of our appreciation. I'll just grab it.
Oh, thank you very much. Great questions. Oh, thank you. Oh, they're lovely. Thank you very much. That will come in. That will be very handy. I never leave the house without a cup of tea, and
like
I
fun.
spend lots of time on the road, so taking it with me early morning, it'll come with me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done, both of you. That was great questions.
Thank you.